My name is Rebecca, on paper, Becky, as many of you know me, and I've been with Nature SAS since 2007. You might have seen me here as a more spinny, obnoxious summer student back in the day, and since then I've spent the last 18 years largely working with the stewardship programs and working with and learning from landowners across Saskatchewan, largely in the grassland ecosystem, for the benefit of grassland conservation, habitat conservation for species at risk. Today, I don't get to get out as much, so I'm very happy to be down here. Pretty much could do the drive with my eyes closed, so it's like coming back home, and I'm really happy to be here. And today, I've been asked to talk more broadly, though, about what we all know about community or citizen science and the stewardship benefits, which I know probably every single person here knows one benefit or another, or how the work that you do on your landscape, or as a partner organization supporting the work that you do, that it's all about working together, and I'm sure you've had hopefully numerous benefits over the decades and the years of working on your operations. So today I just wanted to set the stage, since I'm the first speaker, set the stage of thinking community, thinking what you kind of probably do on your day-to-day basis when you're in coffee shop conversations or out and about in your community, and just emphasize the like-mindedness that has brought us all here today, and hopefully you'll take away with you the spirit to continue this on. So I thought I'd break it up into two, thinking about the community science and then the actual stewardship, the benefits to the landowner. I'm not going to list off all the stewardship, the benefit, incentive opportunities, but this is more broadly thinking about it and ensuring that you keep it top of mind when you're thinking about your operations and the benefits. So as far as community science goes, it's quite wide-ranging in how you can engage. If you want to just as an individual on your operations at home, or if you want to with your neighbors, with your local community, or broadly to the global system when traveling abroad. There's many ways to do that, and I know most of you probably know at least one or two of these ways, but some of the things that we don't think of, that you may not think about in your daily operation, now that it's pretty decent coverage when it comes to internet, it's not like it was when you or I were growing up. I think most of us have decent access if you're not, if you're out in the open to internet. And that allows you access to a number of apps and opportunities to engage and learn from and connect to what you have going on in your landscape. So Nature Watch is an overarching umbrella program that's been around for decades. And for example, Plant Watch has over 30 years of dandelion data for the first dandelion blooms in the spring. And this data is really important because what they were able to correlate this with was climate change and how bloom dates for dandelions on average are blooming a week sooner than they were 30 plus years ago. So this is really interesting, and you can connect it to your local operation or the bigger picture all the way up to a global landscape. And there are a whole bunch of different projects that maybe frogs are your interest, maybe ice is your interest. And what all these watches do is it allows you to go online and share, and you can do this privately or anonymously, to share the first dates of when you're seeing, based from, like I said, the dandelions or certain plants blooming, milkweed, what is going on with your milkweed, worm watch. Kids love this because it connects them and allows them to be able to identify what species of worm, and then hopefully that will engage parents and grandparents, because worm species are great connectors to ecosystem health, and same with frog watch. Ice watch is really cool because you can submit the date when the ice cracks or retreats from the shoreline. And snow tweets is a relatively newer one, and that's throughout the season that you can connect online with sharing snow events in your area. We all know that it could be different from your parcel, your home quarter than it is 10 miles down the road. So it's really cool to see, and the hope is that the more people that contribute to this, the more that they can see the change and the correlations to climate change and different things over time. iNaturalist is a super awesome hub. If you're not on it already, I encourage you all to Google it and add the app onto your cell phone. It is like a little workhorse in your backyard, and it's free. So is NatureWatch, but it doesn't quite do the same as this. iNaturalist allows you to just snap a photo or upload a photo that you got somewhere, maybe it was offline, and you can upload that, and it'll not only identify it for you, but you can have the confidence knowing that it was identified by an expert. Sometimes the species can get a little tricky, and iNaturalist is really, there are hubs of experts in all the different regions that help to identify that. And it's really cool because especially if you get into insects and the correlation with the plants that they have and the specialized functions that they provide, it's really interesting to see what you have because it's the first step to knowledge and understanding of your operation and how the ecosystem's interacting and how what you're doing is benefiting the whole ecosystem in your operation as a whole. So it's, like I said, it's super easy. You just go right onto it and you just snap the picture or upload your picture. You can save the pictures, you can save projects for yourself, you can save it in different little files and folders. You can go online and you can look for projects going on in your area that are public projects because it has both public and private settings. You can contribute to, if you have a community-wide, some sort of a bio blitz where you're going around in one day and try and snap as many pictures and get a snapshot of what's going on in the community. And you can create projects yourself if you want to engage the community in. And those are really great for community events, especially if you want to get families out walking around the town, checking out what all the critters are in the neighborhood. It really is helpful. So there are lots of different programs, and of course I'm biased, so I have to share just the brief example of a Stewarts of Saskatchewan. So community science isn't just about seeing what insects and contributing to researchers, but it's also about the conserving of the habitat for those species and broad biodiversity as a whole. So by engaging and learning about and seeing what sort of reactions are happening from your actions on your landscapes, you're contributing to habitat conservation, and you're contributing to helping conserve the habitat not only just for the broad, but for species at risk as well. And so there are lots of opportunities out there and programs that are like voluntary handshake agreement type programs, like the ones that we run with the Stewarts of Saskatchewan. They really help to support, like I said, that habitat conservation, but the long-term monitoring as well of these species. So like NatureWatch or like iNaturalist, there are different ways. Those are quite passive ways. This one is a little more engaging, so it allows you to take those steps further into getting some more of those stewardship benefits and incentives. And ultimately, community. Now, community, you'll see this woven into everything that we do. I mean, that's why we're all here today, because we're like-minded, we care, we may have slightly different agendas, but it's all the same goal. It's all the same goal, thinking about the broader conservation of grasslands. And so then when we come to more of the benefits, we're thinking benefits like when you're engaging in community or citizen science, it's the benefits both on your specific operation and larger, going to the community that you're living in, to all the way to globally to those like-minded communities overseas, and the broader benefits that conserving, for example, grasslands, ecosystems provide, that you are providing. So obviously, identification, just knowing what you have, is a benefit that you get from engaging in stewardship work, whether that's, like I said, yourself through the apps, or engaging with a partner, whether it's a non-government or government support partner, or other ranchers in your community, helping each other identify things. Sometimes at the coffee shop, we don't always bring up well, I saw this really cool flower, did you see it? And but maybe through events like this, you have a like-minded partner sitting down the road from you in the hall. To knowledge. So when we're talking about sharing of knowledge, one of the things that I've had the benefit of in the last 18 years is constant learning. I'm pretty lucky that I get to engage with and learn from hundreds and hundreds of operations every year, and so it's overwhelming, the diversity out there on the landscape and the way operations work. It's just, no one operation is the same. And you may have heard me in the past say this, and you may already know this, but it really is true, is when we come together, we're learning from each other, and mostly, even though I say this is like coming home, it's really like coming back to school too. So we, through partnerships, we all have a capacity. We're only one individual human, and we only have so much time. So we need to, and I strongly believe in this, I'm trying to do, for example, yesterday, I have a colleague reach out to me and say, Becky, did you remember this? Oh, thank goodness, yes, I need to remember to pick up those cameras because I'm trying to go in 5 different directions and do different things. But it takes a community to help each other out and to support each other. And so that's why by coming together and utilizing each other as much as possible is critical. And the knowledge that we gain from each other can lead to things and benefits on your local operation. Not just us learning from you, but us providing supports that you're needing as you voice you need them. Incentives can be wide-ranging, not just small tweaks and adaptations that you can make on your operation. Maybe that's not really what you want. Maybe, just a nice little certificate or a gate sign is enough for you to be able to get out there and contribute and share information and learn from each other. Maybe you're looking to do some habitat enhancement, or maybe you need some financial support for a project that you want to do, but just can't quite get it to the finish line. And then again, these gatherings, we have, whether it's all sorts of partners, bringing each other together. We know this so well. It's constant. There's nothing more rewarding than me showing up at a long-time steward's, now friend's house, and them testing their dandelion wine on me because they have this new great idea. I'm all for it. So, and then, knowing the different opportunities for the different phases and stages and priorities of your life, whether you want something legally binding or whether you don't want something legally binding. Knowing all that, these kinds of circles allow you the connections to know what's available to you to expand your potential opportunities. And again, I'll hone in, it's really about community. It's about bringing each other together, and community, citizen science, community science is exactly that provides that exact opportunity to bring each other together. Yes, there's always the benefits, but that's what, I mean, friendships are mutually beneficial. If it's one-sided, it doesn't last. We know that whether it's just one-on-one friendships or whether it's a business transaction. You can't just have it one-sided. So community is really important to support each other, and I hope that me talking and sharing this today kind of sets the stage for this meeting, this gathering, this AGM, of what the whole intention, the whole point of Sodcap is. It's to support, it's to learn from, it's to maybe experiment and evolve and see where we go. But doing it together and with community, I think, is key. So thank you for the brief moments that I'm here, that you've asked me to come and share. But if you do want or are curious about anything in your operations or programs or projects, or maybe just if something exists, you can ask myself or one of the Sodcap staff. And that is one of the responsibilities we give ourselves, is to ensure that we keep up to speed on what our partners are doing, things that are going on, so that we can connect you to what is important to you. So with that, thanks for having me, and I hope the meeting goes great today.
It's Mindy. I work for the Saskatchewan Stock Growers Foundation, and today I'm going to do a brief recap on our tree conservation engagement program. Okay, so as many of you know, when you're involved with grasslands, they're disappearing. We have less than 20% of our grasslands intact right now in the province. A lot of that is due to disturbances from cultivation, urban expansion, energy resource development, and the remaining grasslands that do exist are typically in areas of less desirable soil types or have topography that causes limiting factors for that development. The ranchers that steward these grasslands typically have had very little programs in place to incentivize and protect those grasslands for long terms. So the question that we have is, how do we incentivize these native grassland landowners to keep those grasslands intact and keep them going for generations to come? So historically, one of the few ways that you could do this was through conservation easements. When you have a conservation easement on your land, you essentially sell your land use and development rights to whoever you're signing that easement with. There's multiple agencies in the province that exist to register easements on land, and all of these easements have been perpetual. So once you have that easement on the land title, it's on there forever. But there's still a large pool of ranchers that were very hesitant to sign these easements. A lot of them just didn't want that perpetual factor in there. Because what is a rancher's, one of their most important assets? Probably their land. That's their livelihood, they depend on that. That's their insurance moving forward. So once you start to sign any sort of development rights away, then that could essentially affect the ranch's viability in the future. So a lot of this comes down to ranchers having a mistrust for agencies that offer easements. Some ranchers just simply weren't interested in them either. Not everyone's going to sign these agreements. There was a fear of restricted land access or open land access once you sign those types of deals. They didn't want an agency to come in and tell them how to run their land. They still want to manage it the way they can. They essentially just wanted to say, we're committing to keeping this grassland intact without that, or someone coming over their shoulder telling them, you need to be doing or grazing a certain way. So then what other options do we have? The creation of a land trust, essentially, to build more flexible programming, or having the land trusts that are currently working on the landscape on native grasslands to explore more flexible programming. So that's kind of where the Saskatchewan Stock Growers Foundation came in. We're a land trust based in Saskatchewan, and our goal is native grassland conservation. So conservation easement program, which is unique from perpetual because it's only for a set term length. They're still put in place to protect that biodiversity and function of the native grasslands, but also providing flexibility for the landowner or future landowners to make changes in land use and make decisions down the road if needed. Like a perpetual easement, they're tied to the land title, and so it does transfer with ownership, but the landowner still retains ownership and control and access over their land. The landowners are still free to sell, gift, or will that property if they would like, but if that term easement is still on the land, when they do that, if there's any sort of transfer of ownership, like I said, it just transfers to that next landowner. So for our term lengths, we have a minimum of a 25-year term length for our easements. Although this can extend, so we can go up to 30, 35, 40 years. It really depends on the landowner, where they're at in their operation. If that next generation is going to be stepping in the next few years, what's the impact of that going to be? Are they comfortable signing a longer-term agreement? But essentially, the longer the term length, the more financial incentive we can offer landowners. And once that term length does expire for the easement, whoever is the landowner, they have two options. So the first one, they can walk away. And all of those restrictions are lifted on that easement. But they also have the option to renegotiate another term easement or possibly a perpetual easement on that land. We have 3 restrictions when it comes to our easements. And again, this just goes back to protecting that integrity and function of the native grasslands. So no breaking, no drainage, and no development. The no break is pretty straightforward. I mean, if we're protecting a native grassland to keep it intact as is, we don't want you to cultivate it. That's pretty simple and straightforward. If there's any existing lakes, ponds, streams, wetlands, ideally we're protecting those as well because those grasslands and riparian areas of wetlands function as one big system. And then no development, so we don't want the construction of any additional buildings, yard sites, new roads or facilities. When it comes to replacing or updating existing structures that are on that land, that's still okay because they're existing structures. We just don't want to expand them anymore. And then when it comes to things like developing livestock water and things like that, we deem that acceptable because it supports that ranching infrastructure. In order to maintain these native grasslands as healthy as we can, we need to graze them. And in order to do that effectively, we need water sources. So that's something that we keep in mind. And then under the no development as well, you can't really read it, but there's no extraction or removal of surface materials. So that can be soil, sand, gravel. It really depends what area you're in, what your soil is like. When it comes down to the financial side of these term easements, we use a fair market value system. So financial compensation is a payout based on anywhere from like 24, 25 to 30% of what a landowner would receive for perpetual easement. So currently, fair market value for grasslands in a lot of the areas in the province have reached right around $1,500 an acre. And the valuations that we've done for easement, the payment can vary anywhere from $100 to $300 an acre. We're also exploring other options of determining compensation, such as like an income-based approach to possibly mitigate income discrepancies between the cow-calf producer and annual cropping sectors. So historically, I mean, this year obviously things are changing a little bit, but annual cropping has seen a larger revenue return for quite a while compared to our cow-calf producers. And they also have a little more protection in place, so they've brought national crop insurance programs that they can enroll in to potentially mitigate risk. So that's something that we factor into that. Now the thing is, we're the first term CE program in Saskatchewan and Canada that we are currently aware of. So there's just a genuine lack of compensation models to base our program off of. We have looked into what they're doing in the states, because some states do allow term conservation easements. So we've kind of looked at what they're doing, how can we apply that up here. But right now we're still just using that fair market value system. So when we're determining our valuation on land, there's multiple factors that we have to take into account to come up with this magic number. The first one is term length. So like I mentioned earlier, the longer the term, the more we can offer. So instead of a 25-year term, if you're going to do a 40-year term, we'll compensate you greater for that. If the land is at high risk for development, say it's right on the edge of the city, we could potentially offer them more because there's that risk of development coming into it. We would call that a higher risk grassland. Land that's rich in natural resources can also increase the value. We've had conversation with landowners about valuation on their properties when they don't feel it's enough. Say they've got a corner of the pasture that they know there's gravel there. They could potentially develop that and get income from that. Then we have to take that into account as well. And then if there's any land identified as critical habitat, that automatically bumps the compensation as well. The one thing to know is currently term conservation easements don't qualify for the eco-gifts program. So we have to pay it out as a lump sum. So there's a national eco-gifts program that you basically get a tax receipt for either a portion or the entire value of that easement. And we don't qualify for that right now. So with our easements, we don't require any specific management of the land. So we'll create what we call a baseline report before the easement is even on the land, and that basically gives us an idea of like what's the health of that land right now. And so once we have that baseline report put together, the goal is to maintain that property in the current range health or better. Ideally, we never want to go backwards, but I mean, when we have to battle drought, weather issues, pests, things like that, we're fairly flexible with that. I mean, we're understanding when it comes to those situations. And we still allow haying and grazing on all land under easement. Landowners still determine who has access to that property and so on and so forth. But this program doesn't come without challenges. So we're a very young land trust. We only have 5 staff members. None of us, there's 2 of us are full-time. Everyone else is still busy with other things. So when it comes to things like completing assessments and reports alongside other SSGF programming, that's a challenge for us. Another thing is funding. So our term conservation easement program has seen significant demand, and it currently exceeds our funding capacity. So we're always actively seeking funding. And then another thing is we're hoping that these term CEs can be recognized under that eco-gifts program eventually. That's something we are actively working towards. I'm not sure where we're at with that right now. And then continuously reassessing the financial incentive to keep grasslands intact and making sure that we are compensating landowners enough for the ecological goods and services that that land provides. So these numbers have changed a little bit actually. So you've got over 20 landowners interested in term easements across the province. It's over 16,000 acres that we could potentially protect through this program. We've completed, I think there's 2 more there, so now 8 appraisals that sit over 8,000 acres of native grassland protection. But like I mentioned before, that funding capacity, we're currently having some issues with that. So we have to be a little picky when we're moving forward with these easements right now. We can't fund everyone, unfortunately. Ideally, we can down the line once we have more funding secured, but we have to prioritize our funding right now. So that's just one thing that we're being a little bit careful about. And we do find that this term conservation easement program will fill a need to conserve grasslands and protect them. It's just another tool in the toolbox that landowners can use. If they're not interested in a perpetual easement, or they just want to try out a term easement and then maybe move to perpetual after, there's lots of options. And we have signed, we did officially sign our first term CE earlier this year. just south of Fermanagh, Saskatchewan, and that was for a 25-year term length. So that's the first one that we know of in Canada. So that was very exciting for us that we're able to do this in these native grasslands in Saskatchewan and get this program rolling, get it off to a good start. We've signed a couple more since. So it's really nice to see that we created this term easement program and there's an uptake, there's a demand, people are interested in enrolling. Whether or not they actually sign it or whether they're just showing interest, there's conversations going on. And all of those conversations help to protect these grasslands and the animals. So our next steps, continuing offering these programs, having conversation with landowners, increase areas of focus to all over the province once we are able to increase some of our funding capacity down the road. And then of course gathering feedback from landowners around future programming options and alterations to current programs, making sure that we take that feedback into consideration when we're making any changes to make sure that these programs will work on the ground for the landowners. Because there's no point in us designing a program that there's not going to be any uptake for, that we have no impact on that land. These are our main program funders right now: the Weston Family Foundation, National Fish and Wildlife, and Environment and Climate Change Canada. For our term easements, Weston Family Foundation and National Fish and Wildlife are our big funders for that. Environment and Climate Change Canada, they help to fund some of our other programming that we do. And this is my contact information. I guess one thing of note would be that it'll be interesting to see in the next couple of years here what's going to happen with term easement programs. We've been in talks with quite a few agencies in Alberta. So there's a bit of a change in Alberta. There's a pot of money that would go to perpetual easements historically, but now they've shifted their priorities and they're using that pot of money for term easements only. So we've had multiple agencies reach out to ask about how we're structuring these, what it's looking like, what's the landowner feedback like. So it'll be nice to have some other agencies that aren't just us doing this, that we can kind of go back and forth with, figure out what's working, what's not, and potentially try to make this program even better. But yeah, that was a very quick recap on our program. Does anybody have any questions for me? If not, I'm here all day. Yes?
Very good.
Yes.
Thanks, Keith. Is there a clicker?
No.
No, it didn't work.
I can try again.
Wait, for those who don't know me, I'm Kelly Williamson. I'm co-executive director here. There's the comic. We can give you a little update on and a brief overview for those who haven't seen this project before. Lots of you in the room I have, but I will get a little bit on it before Eric gives her. Wow. Oh, this was so there's 2 photocopies at the front of the room there. It's all our project supporters, and without those folks, we wouldn't have a project like this. So it's always important to make sure you identify your project supporters. It might even be printout in our
The same as like
oh, that's all right. I just want to make sure I reference
page 8 and 9.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, anyway, I'll go over it. There's no graphics today. So anyways, the project framework is all about co-creating knowledge that we need within a network of producers, project partners like NGOs, and the research community within Ag Canada and within the universities that we partner with. The main universities we partner with are the University of Alberta, University of Saskatchewan, and the University of So this national network, and there's supposed to be a picture of Canada there showing you 13 different living lab sites across Canada. The whole premise and principles that back this living lab network is based in user-centered innovation, working in partnerships across researchers, producers, and other partnerships with NGOs. This round of funding goes from 22 to March 31st. So in our Living Lab project, Living Lab Central Prairies, we have 30 producers, over 30 producers signed up, over 40 researchers, and 15 partnering entities that are involved in the project. So you can imagine there's a few moving parts there and a lot of logistics and coordination. So when we created this Living Lab project, we were developing approaches that emulated principles and fundamentals that prairie ecosystems have to make them resilient. And the 5 main ones that we are referencing and really trying to emulate or kind of tease out in our approaches are their diversity. So there's a lot of biodiversity on these prairie systems. They give them resiliency. The perenniality drives resiliency. They're grazed. And the soil plant animal interface and the fact that they're grazed has some qualities that really drive them. And then, of course, they're dynamic. There's all kinds of different aspects of climate, sociology, people that make these systems really fluid and adaptable, and the whole the correct word, but anyways, dynamic. They're always in kind of a sense of change because of the influences on them. It's too bad the pictures aren't showing up. These pictures are quite fancy, actually, man. The way to create them, and anyway, they're not showing up. So the first one, as Mindy was just talking about, is the avoidance of land conversion and some of the socioeconomic drivers that drive people to engage in that or to not engage in that. We're looking at different grazing management impacts, looking at some approaches that are going to drive soil influences, but also some grazing impacts that are going to drive biodiversity. We're looking at a couple different approaches of promoting perennials, and that was in some restoring typically cultivated lands back to perennial cover, but also rejuvenating old stands. Looking at adding biodiversity to old crescent wheat stands or smooth brome stands. Looking at biodiversity and how that can lead to biophysical, but also potentially production gains. I would not be doing my part here if I did not mention the main goals of the Living Lab, and that is carbon sequestration, greenhouse gas reduction, and other physical, social, or ecological outcomes. All of these BMPs fundamentally are being investigated for carbon gains and greenhouse gas. The last BMP, polycropping, and looking at a few different aspects of polycropping, effects of grazing on it, effects of different utility on it, but also the effects of not projectors forwarding, but my screen. Anyway, on these sites, got some key parameters, as I mentioned, carbon, greenhouse gas. We're looking at soil microbiota, cataloging that. We're looking at nutrient cycling. We're looking at the plant community, production quality, ecological aspects, and native prairie plant communities. We're looking at animals, the production. We're looking at insects and bird communities and how they interrelate with different grazing effects and on different EMP practices. And then, of course, there's a big social economic piece, looking at some of the socioeconomic drivers, but also cost benefits, production value. Oh, I swear when I downloaded this. But anyway, quite up to date here, quite a massive effort in data sets and sampling across these 30 living lab sites across the province. So a huge soil core effort with the University of Alberta, getting carbon sampling across all kinds of different soils and ecosites across the province. Combined with soil microbial community analysis, really trying to catalog what soil microflora, microbiota exist naturally in our ecosites. So when we are doing agronomic practices, we understand what the reference community is, just like we've done with plant communities and understood what those native prairie landscapes naturally have. It's good to understand a baseline of what these soils naturally have. So when we are using different agricultural practices and pest management practices, we know what we need to be shooting for. We know what's naturally there. An extensive effort in bird and insect monitoring, understanding the relationships between vegetation cover and what birds are using those areas, and also what types of bugs are flourishing in different types of scenarios. So 33 farms and ranchers. That one slide, what I had them dispersed across 3 major soil zones, black, dark brown, and brown. We stratified it across the province like that because we know that what necessarily works in the black soil zone does not work in the dark brown soil zone. So we understand what a best management practice there might not necessarily be a best management practice. Like brown soil zone. 20 field crews and across 7 organizations and 650 site blocks. So, accumulating quite a data set. There's going to be quite a bit of information here to go over. With that, I mentioned in the beginning, University of Saskatchewan, University of Waterloo are doing an extensive social, economic piece in understanding what's driving decision making across these farms and ranches. So, this created basically a prairie-wide connection, prairie-wide network of farms and ranches across the province, and a community of learning with those managers plus the universities and other NGOs that we engage. And with that, there's a whole cycle of analysis and defining working with that information we collect to tweak the model. So right now we probably in collecting data and probably moving into discussing and interpreting findings. December we'll have a large meeting in Bouchard again like we did last year, and we'll evaluate results and experiences, and then in the spring we'll move into go through sharing and generating ideas, and redesign and tweak those BMPs for next year's field season.
A lot of interconnectedness going on. Really, just the theme of today.
Just abstract. So anyway, this project, we are managing relationships with our producer network. We're managing relationships within our partners in Ag Canada and academia, bringing everybody together to learn and understand from each other, and then try and put that into action. And dispersing that knowledge that we gain from this work. With that, I'll take any questions. I've got a minute or two. I apologize for that.
So mostly native grassland. We only have a few quarters of tame grassland, so just kind of give you some pictures to show some context. So I'm happy I got to use my computer, or else it would have been lost on me. So these are some of the projects we've completed over the past 2 years with Living Labs. So the multi-taxa project, they're just looking at the biodiversity. So they had Birds Canada out, they did insect traps, like just kind of trying to see how our grazing was impacting these other species. We did the polycrop project, so planting different blends. So a really complex polycrop blend and then some simple blends, see how that worked in drought-stricken areas, so that was interesting. We did a tame grass rejuvenation project, because like I said, we only have a few quarters of tame grass, but what we do have is really kind of old, burnt out stands. So looking at the best ways to rejuvenate them, and then this year we're doing supplementing some heifers with canola meal as well on native grass at this time of year. So that's kind of just the broad overview of what we've done, and I'll get a little bit more in depth here. So some of the things that we've really enjoyed working with the Living Labs was some of the data we've gotten from doing these projects. So this was super interesting. That when Birds Canada came out and did surveys, so just like knowing all the different bird species that also call our ranch home, some of the species at risk, and just kind of knowing that. And it was nice, it's like, kind of like Mindy had mentioned, like they're not trying to tell you what to do or how to graze differently, but just knowing that and seeing like what we can do to kind of adapt our grazing better for this environment, we thought was really interesting. And then I thought too, when you look at other organizations like the Canadian Roundtable for Sustainable Beef and the National Beef Sustainability Strategy, like that's going to be important to us as ranchers going forward, right? To kind of explain what we're doing and the benefit as ranchers we're actually providing to the environment. So to know that like 74% of the land contributes for reproduction for wildlife. And then when you do studies like this with Living Labs to see Birds Canada out there, you see how many other species call our ranch home. I just think there's a really good synergy between programs like this and kind of, I think, what the beef industry is trying to accomplish is positioning ourselves and explaining our environmental impact in a positive way. So I just really appreciate being able to be a part of things like that for the bigger picture too, for the integrity of the beef industry. So that was a really positive project we did with Living Labs. And then we did try some polycrops. We had some dismal failures with them, like I think I've been pretty open about that. But that's another reason we've really appreciated being part of this is they're trying these large scale in all sorts of different areas. So we've been dry, like we did get rain this year, thankfully. It was a little bit later, but we got it. But other than that, like we've been in drought for 7 years. So to try to figure out how to navigate drought, you hear all these things about polycrops. I was super interested in soil health, trying to figure out, how to make this work, how we can improve our grazing days. lessen our winter feed bill, all those things. And so reading about polycrops and soil health and the diversity, what it can do, I was super interested in it. We tried it in 2022, very dry for us. We had an amazing polycrop yield, so I was like, I figured it out, right? We can figure out how to ranch in a drought now. So we bought the exact same thing, seeded the exact same blend in 23. It was a complete failure, complete failure. We seeded 2 quarters and we got a week of grazing out of it, not good. In 24, after prolonged drought, I thought I was really smart. We bought a drought-tolerant blend. I thought, again, figure this out. It was, again, a failure. So just trying to navigate that, and I can, from the science, right, you understand diversity, how that can be beneficial in a polycrop. Warm season, cool season plants, whatever the weather is, that type of plants can express themselves. That makes total sense. But in our area, it just hasn't been very successful. So again, yes, that wasn't great for us to learn that, but I appreciate, again, Living Labs doing this full scale and then sharing this information with other producers. So I know I've heard from producers in the east part of the province say they get a bunch of rain, and this is the greatest thing for them. That's wonderful. But then for producers in, say, our area, we don't all have to go and try it and fail at it, right? We can kind of learn from each other, or be like, hey, this didn't work here, but maybe we can tweak it a little bit, or what can you do to make it work? So we've really appreciated being a part of that. And just to end on a more positive note, that was our good polycrop year, and it was beautiful with the sunflowers, and we grew up a pile of silage, so that was cool. And then this past year, actually, so in 24, we seeded that drought-tolerant blend I have up there, and then we also added some winter triticale to it. And last year, like I said, it was a failure, nothing grew. But then this, last fall, we kind of got a little bit of rain, and we saw some triticale come up. We're like, okay, great, that was a bit too late. And then this spring, though, we weren't sure what we were going to do, and we were maybe going to pivot with Living Labs and try to seed a perennial blend. And that was all in place. Then we go out there and we're like, this triticale is really coming along. So we decided to keep it, and we got a month of grazing out of it. It was amazing. So it was seeded last year. Somehow that worked. It was total fluke, but it did. It worked really well. And then we actually hosted a Living Labs tour this spring, and we kind of went through our triticale, and Cal and I weren't really sure what we were going to do with it. We had the cows in there. We were strip grazing it. And we had some ideas from some of the other more experienced people who have kind of seeded triticale before, and they suggested to us, because there were some we kind of missed the window a little bit. We were a little bit late because we weren't expecting anything out of that. And so some of the really late stuff they suggested to us, have the cows come in and knock it down, maybe it'll reseed itself. And so that's what we tried to do. So excited to see what next year comes. And then actually some millet. We didn't seed these 2 quarters at all this year, but we had millet from the previous year and winter triticale come up. So again, just kind of the opportunity to share and collaborate with other producers was really helpful too, because we weren't really sure what we were going to do. So just to get that feedback and that collaboration has been really great. So this is the cows grazing that winter triticale this spring. And like we said, it gave us quite a bit extra grazing that we were sure thankful for this spring. Rejuvenation. So like I said, I don't love sharing that picture because it obviously shows some of our weaknesses, right? There's a lot of bare soil there. That's not a great picture, but it's an honest picture. And so our tame grass was super burnt out, a lot of bare soil, so things that we were really trying to work on. And so we did the rejuvenation project with Living Labs. And I was honestly way too scared to just spray that out and try to seed it, because what if it doesn't rain? Then we're just going to have dirt blowing everywhere. And so what we ended up doing was just grazing it really hard, kind of 2 quick grazes. Didn't give it any recovery time, obviously, because we were trying to knock it back with some yearling heifers, and then seeded into it for that project. And I just had some notes on here, finding a seeder was an issue, but it was, helpful. Again, we could kind of lean on Living Labs, and we did end up branding just a Valmar to do that. And again, it wasn't, so we did that last spring, so spring of 24, and I didn't think it looked that great, but then the U of A was doing that project, I think, and he had told me they were actually quite happy with what they saw from that. So that's good, and again, just nice to collaborate, because I think there are a lot of old tame pastures around. How are we going to rejuvenate those? And to know, we didn't have money on chemical, so we kind of lessened a little bit of that risk if we did spray everything out and it didn't rain and that seed didn't grow. So just kind of, again, working together to collaborate our findings, we really, really enjoyed. And then currently this is brand new. We just split some heifers, replacement heifers in 2 groups, weighed both groups. One group is getting canola meal supplement at 2 pounds a day and the other is not. And all we've done, like we just split a quarter in half, so they're on native grass right now. It started September 1st. So we're just seeing, you know, what are the extra gains they can get with this extra protein supplement compared to just on native grass. So that's kind of what we're looking at right now. And I guess I kind of wove that into when I was talking about it, but like ROI for participating in this, I think collaboration and networking are super important to me. I feel like you can always learn something from talking to somebody, and then it's just been really great, I think, to like share those experiences. Like, yeah, it's hard to stand up here and like see that picture of bare soil, but it's true. And so how can we all work together to like have ideas that work for everybody, right? And just to learn from each other in that way, I think is really important. So network with other ranchers, but also other industry. Like from Birds Canada coming out and doing their surveying and monitoring. One of the guys from Birds Canada, he probably doesn't want to answer our emails anymore, but we ask him questions all the time, like, Kyle found an owl, like it was like on the ground. We're like, this is weird. So we emailed Kyle, like, what is this? What's going on? And just that wealth of information and learning is, yeah, been super interesting for us because I honestly didn't know much about birds before this project, so that's been really good. Good data was another thing we thought about that's really interesting. We're trying a lot of different management changes and kind of really pivoting on what we're doing on our ranch. So having good baseline data is really interesting. Things that, you know, we always say we want to do, but maybe not get time to, right, or get put on the bottom of the priority list. So it's been really fun working with Living Labs to get that data as well on our operation. And then the other thing, like, so my husband also sits on the SCA board, so we were talking about this, like having Living Labs prioritizing some of these projects is interesting to hopefully have like more data-driven information for policy and EMP programs going forward. I think is really important. And we can say as a group, like, you know, we've done these projects on farm when like the ministry may be coming out with other rebate or funding programs, like how we can collaborate that way is helpful. And then lastly, just further opportunities for learning. So not only like getting together with, you know, groups like this or different tours, but also Kyle went to Bob Kinford. There was a instinctive migratory grazing clinic a couple summers ago in Mancoda. So just, you know, those taking advantage of those opportunities for further learning are really important to us and have really positively impacted what we do and just kind of the changes we've been making and what we're up to. So yeah, that's kind of just a really quick overview of the things that we've done in our operation with the Living Labs projects.
Where do you get your seed mixtures?
Like the polycrop ones,
Yeah.
we bought them from Union Forage.
So they have it all mixed for you when you...
Yeah, they were all pre-blended, yeah. And then some of them, like you could also add other things like that drought-tolerant blend. We added that winter trait in there too. They kind of pre-mixed it for us.
With your Valmar, did you harrow it in at all, the seed, or did you just blow it straight on?
There were heavy harrows on that valve.
Okay, there
Yeah.
was. And then did you graze it after that, or did you just leave it sit for a year?
No, we left it. So we did that, I think it was like around June 1st of 24, and we didn't graze that till the end of June this year.
Yeah, so a year.
Yeah, a year, yeah.
Fair enough, thank you.
Yeah.
Erica, you rent them from Ponderosa Ag, right?
You betcha, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
use those.
Any other questions? Go ahead, Bart.
Are those bred heifers or open heifers here?
Red heifers.
So you're just trying to see if they're going in winter in better shape?
Yeah. Yeah, and like, so we got to wait on everything before we divided them up and started this canola meal. So just seeing, yeah, what is that going to look like for weight, for potentially preg check, like, I don't know. Yeah, we have the different groups to get divided, so we'll see.
How long is it, like the trial for?
I think they want 2 months, a minimum.
50 to 60 days is what we're trying.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions for Erica? They've hosted a few tours this summer, right? 2 or 3, maybe. If you get an opportunity to go there, see what they're up to, and have a look at the place and the environment they're dealing with, boy, it's when it starts to rain there, they're gonna be an awesome place. Just before we go to a break, Rebecca has a few more things to bring up, right?
Thank you, Eric.
My name's Tracy Hansen, and I work with Sodcap as a range tech. Louder? Okay. Okay, thanks. Okay. My name's Tracy Hansen, and I work with Sodcap as a range tech, and I'm the lead for their Prairie Pastures program. So I'm just going to give an overview of what the Prairie Pastures program is, what we've been up to this summer, and what we're hoping to accomplish with the program in the future. So the Prairie Pastures program, it's a brand new initiative that we're running as a 2-year pilot program. So for this year, all the way through to 2027. And this program is open to community pastures in the northern Great Plains section of Saskatchewan. And where this program was born from was to kind of address two issues, two concerns that we've been hearing over the last little while. And one of those being due to the change in structure in the community pastures, there's that risk of the knowledge that these long-term managers have. There's a risk of that knowledge being passed down to the next generation, of that knowledge being lost. So that's a concern that has been expressed, and so this program is hoping to address one of those, or that particular issue. And another reason, another why behind this program is many of these community pastures in southern Saskatchewan manage large tracts of intact native prairie, which, as we know and we've been hearing today, provide very important habitat for species at risk. So the two main components of this program address the educational opportunities for pasture managers, riders, and also addressing how important these these large tracts of intact native prairie are for species at risk habitat. So the first part that I was talking about, one way that we're trying to address the issue of that knowledge transfer being lost from longtime managers to the next generation is what this program is attempting to do is to offer and provide mentorship and educational opportunities for current pasture managers, riders, board members, and grazing patrons of these pastures. So for example, this past summer we had a Range Health and Plant ID Field Day out at Lone Tree Pasture in early June. So that's just one of the aspects of grazing management that we're hoping to provide with these educational opportunities. But we're wanting to provide field days and clinics on multiple aspects of grazing management. So some examples of some topics that we're hoping to cover throughout this 2-year pilot program would be, native plant ID, range health, which is two things that we keyed in on with our range health days out at Lone Tree, and we did another one at Macefield Pasture at the end of July. Multi-species habitat assessment, which I'll go into a little bit more detail in a little bit. Species at risk habitat requirements and management. Invasive species ID and control methods is another topic that we're hoping to be able to provide some educational opportunities on. Grazing management principles, grassline bird ID with Birds Canada staff. So for example, next summer we're going to be hosting the Birds Canada staff. We're going to be doing field days in these pastures with the pasture staff to go over some of the grassline birds that they've been identifying in these pastures. And some workshops and clinics that we're also are hoping that, well, they are on the agenda. Low stress livestock handling, livestock health, and roping safety. So we did hold a roping safety clinic this past September at Clint Christensen's facility at Bracken, where we had managers and riders and a few of the board members from the pastures that are in the program. So the second component of the Prairie Pastures program is we're focusing on habitat assessments. So Sodcap is going into these pastures and we are conducting habitat assessments. And we're assessing habitat attributes for multiple species at risk using PCAP's new protocol. And their new protocol is called, it's the Guide to Habitat Attributes by Ecosite for Multiple Species at Risk. So what this information that we're collecting in these pastures, what it's telling us is it's telling us the type of habitat that currently exists out in these pastures and which species at risk might be out in these pastures using that habitat. So when I say the word habitat attributes, just a few examples of what we're measuring when we're out there doing our habitat assessments is things like structure and perches. So when we go to our site, when we're going out, we're picking representative sites within numerous different sites within each field, within each pasture. And we're measuring things like how far is our assessment site to the nearest structure or the nearest perch. So that's an example of a habitat attribute. We're also measuring litter levels in pounds per acre, and also things like we're taking a visual obstruction reading with the Robel pole, which I'll go into a little bit. But those are just examples of different habitat attributes for different multiple species at risk that we are measuring when we're out doing these habitat assessments in these pastures. And also when we're collecting this data for doing the habitat assessments, this data also gives us information on the range health within each field within those pastures. So for example, with the data that we're collecting, we can come up with whether this particular field is healthy or healthy with problems, or the last category within that is unhealthy. So within the habitat assessment part, there's also the range health component as well that we're able to share with the pastures. And the range health is also important because it plays into your stocking rates and your carrying capacities within each pasture as well. Another addition to the habitat assessments is we have contracted Birds Canada to come out into each one of these pastures to do bird surveys. So they had crews out this past summer in 3 of the 4 pastures. And once they have the opportunity to go through and analyze their data, they're going to share with us the different types of bird species that they're finding out there. So then that gives us the opportunity to kind of key in our habitat assessments where they have done their bird surveys, and hopefully we'll be able to correlate our habitat data with the birds that they're actually finding out there. So that's the habitat assessment part of the Prairie Pastures program. So these are just a few pictures, examples of what we're doing out there when we're doing our habitat assessments. We're throwing down quadrants. We're trying to get into every section of every pasture, at least every section, depending on how many ecosites are within that section, and assessing them on a field-by-field basis, and measuring things like litter, bare soil. And this Robel pole that we are using, that's what we're using to measure vegetation height, but then also the visual obstruction, the visual obstruction reading, I guess, within the areas that we're assessing. So in particular, the Robel pole gives us the habitat attribute that's based on, it's taking vegetation height and also the vegetation density into account. And so why does something like this matter? The diagram on the Robel pole there, but the other diagram is showing just a diagram from PCAP's tool that the different habitat attributes for the different species. So this data is telling us, in this particular diagram, the green line telling us what optimal habitat is in regards to that habitat attribute for different species at risk. So we're not just focusing on one particular species, but we're trying to collect data where we have an idea as to optimal habitat within these pastures for multiple species. So what are we doing with this information that we're collecting while we're doing these habitat assessments? We're sharing this information with the pastures, with the pasture staff to supplement current grazing management plans. It's also we're able to provide information on which wildlife and grassland bird species are in these pastures. And so the idea is that by sharing this information with the pastures, is that information can be used to make annual and long-term management decisions that may increase habitat for species at risk or to increase habitat variability to support a greater number of species at risk. And then adding a habitat management plan to their existing management plan, which considers grazing resources, wildlife and species at risk habitat, and the future goals of the community pasture. So the pasture program, those are the two main components, the mentorship and the educational opportunities that we're providing to these pastures. And then also by going out and collecting these, doing these habitat assessments, we're collecting this information that we're able to provide to the pastures. So for the pilot program, for the 2 years, we have 4 pastures that we're partnering with. So one of the pastures that we're partnering with is the Auburn Wise pasture, just south of Cadillac there. And I just included like the topo maps for each of the pastures just to show how big these pastures are and these large intact native chunks of native prairie. You know, we've been talking about native prairie conservation and preservation throughout the day. These pastures play such a huge role in providing species at risk habitat. So Auburn Wise pasture is approximately about 70 sections in intact native prairie. And each pasture has its own number of, different number of, some of them have retaining pastures as well, which they use to complement their native prairie grazing. We have the second pasture that we're partnering with is the Millie Grazing Corporation, just north of Tompkins, up in the Sandhills area there. And we were able to conduct habitat assessments in Auburn and Millie this past summer. And Birds Canada, they did their surveys in Millie, Auburn, and in Lone Tree, sorry, in those 3 pastures this summer. The third pasture that we've got in our program is Macefield, which is about 58 sections south of Van Marie, just kind of along the Grasslands National Park down there. And then the fourth pasture that we're partnering with is Lone Tree, just south of Bracken, down along the border, and that is approximately 53 sections. I'm just including this, when we're talking about species at risk, this is just a map of this Conservation Data Center species at risk screening, and it just indicates all the species at risk that have been observed in the pasture of Lone Tree. And we have some pasture reps from Lone Tree here today that we are going to move into a panel discussion. But before I do that, I just want to acknowledge that this particular program with Sodcap is funded by the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation. So we can move, that's all I have for the overview.